Number 10. Dornier bomber. The Dornier bomber, also affectionately known by the name the Flying Pencil thanks to its shape and design, was a German plane that terrorized the skies of Europe during World War II. In 2013, salvage crews managed to pull one up from the bottom of the English Channel, where it had been laying for over 70 years. Although much of the bomber has been eaten away by rust due to its time in the sea with holes in the fuselage showing the wiry scaffolding structure underneath, it's miraculously still in one piece. History and military enthusiasts around the world gave a sigh of relief at the news. The reason why they were so happy is the fact that this is the only surviving example of the Dornier 17 plane. The story behind how it got to the bottom of the English Channel can be traced back to the Battle of Britain in 1940. This plane, along with others, was on a bombing raid to attack the UK county of Essex when they were intercepted by British fighter pilots. Despite the Brits being in far more outdated planes than their opponents, they managed to win, and this particular Dornier plane had to make an emergency landing on the beach at Goodwin Sands near Kent. Landing at low tide, the plane was soon swallowed up by the waves. Number 9. Stuka bomber. The Stuka dive bomber was a fearsome sight during World War II. Operated by the German Luftwaffe, the Junkers Ju-87, which is its official name, was used during many raids. But why was one found buried in separate pits in a forest in Poland in 2021? In 1939, the local base of Gleżny was home to 2 squadrons of Stuka bombers, from which the German forces mounted many attacks on the nearby cities of Warsaw, Hell, and Westerplatte. Believe it or not, this wasn't the occasion when the Junkers plane ended up being buried. Instead, this came later in the conflict, when the base was used to train pilots on how to fly the Stuka aircraft. They would carry out practice bombings at Lake Pluzna, leading to the small island in the middle of it becoming known as Bomb Island by the locals. It was during training that the unfortunate accident occurred. Arkadiusz Dominiak, an expert from the Silesian September 1939 Museum in Tichy, believes that the bomber crashed because of how they were designed to attack targets. When engaging with a target, the Stuka dive bomber would hurtle towards the ground. The G-forces would be so great that sometimes the crew would lose consciousness. Dominiak believes that this is exactly what happened here. As for why it was buried in multiple pits, it's believed that the Germans, when recovering the crash site, simply buried half a ton of scrap metal remains, taking away only useful pieces like the engine, and of course the unfortunate victims of the crash. All that remained of the crew was one single airman's boot. Number 8. C-46 transport plane. It's not just jungles and oceans where World War II planes have been found. One recent discovery was at the top of the snow-capped Himalayas in India. Sadly, though, it's one that ended badly not only for the people on the plane, but was fraught with danger for those who attempted to salvage it. In early January 1945, a C-46 transport plane carrying 13 passengers from Kunming in southern China vanished in bad weather over a steep area of Arunachal Pradesh state. The plane and its passengers wouldn't be seen again for almost 80 years. In 2018, 3 local Lisu guides died of hypothermia whilst they were in the area where the plane was located. Despite this, though, adventurer Clayton Cools pressed on, and in 2022 he and his team managed to find the wreckage of the plane, the pieces partially covered by snow. Although it looked unrecognizable, the team was able to find its tail number on one of the pieces and confirm it was the aircraft they were looking for. They conducted a search for survivors, but no bodies were ever found at the site. Despite this, though, it brought closure to the team and most of all to the man who financed the mission, Bill Schur. Bill's father had been an officer traveling on board the plane, and although he never really knew his dad, he wanted to know what happened. Although the ending is bittersweet, at least the Schur family can rest a bit easier. Number 7. Bristol Beaufighter TFX. Debbie Hartley and her partner Graham Holden were taking a leisurely walk along the beach in Cleethorpes, England with their dog in 2020 when they stumbled upon something rather unusual poking out from the sand. At first, the pair didn't know exactly what they were looking at, thanks to being partially buried and badly corroded by salt water. But as they explored the location and the debris further, they realized they were looking at the wreckage of a plane. For the couple who often took this walk together, it was a bit of a shock. They did some research and found out it was a plane from World War II, a Bristol Beaufighter to be exact. After reporting the find to experts, they were able to learn that the plane had crashed back in 1944 when both of its engines failed shortly after takeoff from a nearby airfield. Thankfully, all of those on board survived. Due to its condition, the plane was never recovered and instead has been left to slowly sink beneath the sand again. What's the weirdest thing you've come across on a stroll on the beach? Let us know in the comments below and hit subscribe while you're at it. Number 6. The plains of Truk Lagoon. Operation Hailstone in 1944 was one of the biggest to happen in the Pacific theater. Allied forces attacked a Japanese naval base near the country of Micronesia, which was so well fortified it was nicknamed the Gibraltar of the Pacific. 5 Japanese ships were sunk, along with a staggering 230 aircraft, 30 of them being American, sinking to the depths of the Truk Lagoon. Over the years that followed, countless divers took to the waters not knowing what was beneath them. What they were in fact swimming over was a coral-encrusted reminder of this battle, including many planes. It would take until 2019 2019 for 3 of the American planes to be discovered and saved. This was thanks to Project Recover, an organization that aims to find missing World War II servicemen in the South Pacific. The reason they remained unnoticed for so long lies in the fact that these planes are broken into pieces on the seabed. As a result, thanks to naturally degrading and the coral growing around and on them over the years, they would be hard to recognize as actually being U.S. fighter planes. There's a high possibility that Project Recover may be able to find some remains despite the conditions of the planes. One of those they're holding out hope for is the wreck of a TBM F-1 Avenger torpedo bomber, in which 2 crew members would have been stationed in a compartment at the back of the plane from which it would have been hard to get out. Project Recover is currently waiting for approval to be able to excavate the site fully, so who knows what else they might discover lurking beneath the waves. Number 5. The planes of the USS Lexington. During the fierce Battle of the Coral Sea in 1942, just off the coast of Australia, the USS Lexington, an aircraft carrier, suffered heavy damage in what was then the first aircraft carrier versus aircraft carrier battle in history. The decision was made to scuttle it, purposefully sinking the vessel so that it wouldn't fall into enemy hands, including the planes that were stationed there. The true location of the remains of the Lexington and the rare fighter planes and bombers that would have been on board remained unknown until 2018. This was when groundbreaking technology funded by Microsoft co-founder Paul Allen was used to try to find out what happened to it. They used a state-of-the-art underwater drone to scour the depths of the Coral Sea until they found it. The Lexington was 800 kilometers off the coast of Australia and 9,843 feet below the surface. To put that into perspective, you'd have to dive 1.8 miles in order to see it. Seeming as though the furthest someone has gone with scuba gear is only around 300 meters, you can see why they had to wait until they had the technology to do it. We're glad they did though, as many rare planes were discovered down there and were captured in color and breathtaking detail. For example, you can still see the gray-blue color of a Douglas TBD-1 Devastator torpedo bomber with its white star in a blue circle right next to where its tailpiece has ripped away and been carried away by the currents. Despite this though, experts are still tempted to raise it from the seabed, as there are no intact versions of this plane to be found on the surface, making it a very rare piece of history. Number 4. The Dakota and the Black Lake. Often, when hot weather strikes and the water in lakes and reservoirs decrease, people can find some rather surprising things. Anna Reynolds from Wales was investigating the water at the picturesque lake of Llyn near Snowdonia in 2021 when she noticed a propeller sticking out of the water, revealed by the heat of the summer sun. As the heat continued, more and more pieces of the plane were revealed, most of them just metal scraps, but the propeller remained in one piece. The propeller in question belonged to a U.S. Dakota C-47 transport aircraft. Piloted by William C. Goh and his 3-man crew, the Dakota was on its way back from Paris on November 11, 1944. After being told on the radio that the airfield in Cheshire they were going to land on was closed due to bad weather, they were told to divert to the nearby base of RAF Valley in Anglesey, North Wales. The crew wasn't heard from again. But what happened? The Dakota was not shot down by enemy aircraft, which is what you may expect given the war that was going on. Instead, it crashed into the cliffs high above the lake. Disguised by the weather, it was a major hazard for pilots who did not know the area too well. The Dakota isn't the only plane with some of its wreckage left in the lake though, as others during World War II made the same mistake. It's almost ironic that the translation for Llyn is the Black Lake. Number 3. P-38 Echo on ice. 6 P-38 Echo fighter planes and 2 B-17 Flying Fortress bombers were caught in a fierce blizzard on July 15, 1942. The planes were forced to make an emergency landing on Greenland's glaciers, and it's amazing that they managed to do so given the weather they were up against. Although all of the crew members were able to get away, it meant abandoning the 8 planes and leaving them to the mercy of the icy wilderness. Slowly but surely, they were covered up by layer upon layer of snow and ice. The planes became known as the Lost Squadron. It would take over 50 years for the first one to be discovered again. Named Glacier Girl, she was recovered from the ice and restored to flying condition in 1992. However, some 26 years after that, another P-38 Echo was located using more advanced radar systems in 2018. At first, due to the depth of the plane, researchers weren't sure what they had seen under the ice. They had to perform another test using a heat probe to find out whether it was actually a plane or the remains of a woolly mammoth. Upon finding hydraulic fluid on the probe, they knew they had struck gold. Work will soon begin to recover it, but 6 planes of the Lost Squadron still remain missing. Number 2. The aircraft in the Great Lakes. The Great Lakes in the USA are an important feature of the country's geography, but they're also significant as a large plane graveyard. It's believed that over 200 planes met their end in the waters here. The most notable lake to be the final resting place for many World War II planes is Lake Michigan. The lake was used for training at the time for pilots to learn how to land and take off from aircraft carriers, and sadly some did not pass the exam. Although a lot of the planes have been recovered from the lakes, there are still many others that have never been located or dredged up. Some of the most famous planes that have been recovered belong to the famous Tuskegee Airmen, a team of African-American pilots who trained over the skies of Lake Huron. They lost 7 planes during the training exercises, some of which were fatal crashes. One of the famous P-39 Red Tails was found on April 11, 2014 by David Lasinke and his son while they were out diving. They spotted a door in the murky depths, and eventually the rest of the P-39 came into view. The discovery shocked many people. Not only was this a rare find, but the plane was found exactly 70 years to the day from the day when it crashed. Number 1. B-17 Swamp Ghost. Just like the skies of Europe, the skies of Asia also saw many dogfights during World War II. Known as the Pacific Theater, many planes were shot down over the jungles of places like Papua New Guinea, but only one earned the nickname of the Swamp Ghost. Curiously, many knew of its existence for a long time, including the indigenous people of the country, but no one dared to approach the B-17 bomber, believing it to be cursed. Locals would report that strange figures would rise up out of the swamp around the plane. Many had ventured towards the Swamp Ghost and never returned. Others had ended up going mad after catching malaria. A determined duo, David Talichet, an ex-World War II pilot, and Fred Hagen, a salvage expert, decided to make their way through the dense jungles in the 1980s in order to rescue the Swamp Ghost. Their journey took them across miles of thick jungle and dangerous conditions until finally they could see the sunlight shining off the steel frame. The salvage of the plane was a tiring effort that took place over many years. Finally, after years, the B-17 was cleared to re-enter its homeland, where it was placed in the Pacific Aviation Museum in Hawaii in 2013. It's believed to be only one of 4 left in existence and is by far the best preserved one of the lot. The Swamp Ghost has a final nickname too. Based on the perilous adventure and the condition of the plane, enthusiasts lovingly refer to it as the Holy Grail of military aviation. Thanks for watching. Which of these aircraft fascinated you the most? Tell us about it in the comments down below, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time for another amazing video right here on American Eye.